Has to be a shot other people don't have. I'll save your spot. Photographer guy. Jonathan is whole shot. Why not? Yeah, sure. More than 1 hour. Take it, whoever, just like they leave from yesterday's, but they're stuff.
Hey, Allie.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, and you? Busy?
I just like to do that's
Yeah.
Memorable last year.
Oh, yeah. I still to get my pictures.
I have one. You have to get off on one.
Where?
On the side, Rose Garden.
Oh.
I still have
Rustic
underlays, fully
It's also good to sit on the chairs that we can in front of you guys.
I was just looking at it. All right, we meet again. How did it work on the rent? Did you get everything you wanted?
And then some.
His entry shop?
Yes.
All right.
What does he say?
Yeah.
Well, it's not on yet.
And all 3 red lights. Nice.
Minister is on his way. We won't have any sort of introductory words. We will start with the questions. And we have 30 minutes for the press conference. And who will start? The President? Yeah. Okay. I'll try to cover all the questions. Hi.
Я по-русски буду начинать, потом посмотрим.
And with respect to Russian media, the minister will start in Russian, and we'll start with the first question. President of ANCA, please.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. On behalf of the UN Correspondent Association, welcome and thank you for this meeting. My name is Nabil Abisab. I'm Al Hurra TV station correspondent. You spent 4 or 5 days of intensive discussions with Mr. Kerry and the ISSG. Can you tell us about any progress you have achieved? Is this the end of diplomacy regarding the agreement on the cessation of hostilities? What do you have to say to the Syrian people today?
Well, everything which we said already in the resolutions of the Security Council, in the decisions of the International Syria Support Group, and in the Russian-American documents which have been made, eventually have been made public, because our American friends were shying away from doing so for the reasons I don't understand. Basically, this approach, as consolidated in the resolutions of the Security Council, provide for movement on several tracks. Fighting terrorism, making sure that there is ceasefire between the government and the moderate opposition, except Nusra and ISIL, ensuring humanitarian access, and launching immediately political process which must be inclusive, involving all Syrian parties without any preconditions. The Security Council and the Russian-American agreement also provided for separation of those opposition groups who would like to be part of the cessation of hostilities from Nusra, and this was demanded, I think, in January for the first, or in December. And this goal has been reiterated repeatedly. Unfortunately, the coalition led by the United States, which committed itself to make sure that this separation happens, has not been able to do this, though my good friend and colleague John Kerry, every time we meet, reaffirms that this is the commitment of the United States. We understand that this is a difficult task, but everything is difficult in Syria. And to say that you close your eyes on the fact that Nusra is covering its positions with some moderate groups and therefore don't touch Nusra is not what we agreed. The second topic, which is very important, which is crucial, is the political process. We cannot just close our eyes when one group of the Syrian representatives sabotages the decision of the Security Council, which clearly stated launching the process without any preconditions. I don't envy Staffan de Mistura and his team. We sympathize with them, but I believe they should be more guided by the Security Council resolutions rather than by caprices of some of the participants of negotiations, especially since this very group says that they would not participate in the negotiations if there is no predecision of the fate of President Assad. This is again a flagrant violation of the Security Council resolutions. So we're all in favor of the ceasefire, but without separation Nusra, or rather the opposition from Nusra, the ceasefire is meaningless. During the period from 12th of September, when the Russian-American document was formally in force, after this date, almost 350 attacks of the opposition in Aleppo alone against the government and some residential quarters. Many people were killed, including Syrian military and civilians. And this is not the way, the cessation of hostilities should be maintained. But when the Syrian government responded to these attacks, we were told that this is undermining credibility of the entire exercise. Therefore, they must not respond, sit idle for 7 days, and then maybe the opposition would be kind enough to agree that the cessation of hostilities should be maintained by the opposition as well. And the second issue is humanitarian deliveries. I alluded to already in my speech to the problems for the entire process created by the incidents in Deir ez-Zor and Aleppo. And I can only say that the Russian-American deal provided for Castello Road to be made safe for humanitarian deliveries. And there was a mechanism and procedures agreed in very great detail. In particular, it was provided for the government and the opposition to move by equal distances from the Castello Road. The government started doing this several days ago. The opposition did not reciprocate. More than that, the opposition started firing at the government forces as they were withdrawing in accordance with the Russian-American agreement. So this, and then again, the agreement provided for the government to create one checkpoint and for the opposition to create another one. The government did what it was to do. The opposition did not lift a finger. So we have to understand one very simple thing. All components of the package endorsed by the Security Council must be addressed with the same vigor. And we cannot tolerate situation when humanitarian aspects are being abused, and speculated upon. For the purposes I want to be mistaken, but it seems that some people want to spare Nusra and to keep it for maybe a later stage when the notorious Plan B might be announced.
Thank you very much. Mr. Foreign Minister, in ISSG meeting yesterday, there was a demand for 7 days truce. We understand you offer 3 days, and today you had a meeting with John Kerry, the Foreign Minister, Secretary of State. Were there compromise found out between the two of you? And what good is 7 days or 3 days if you stated that the conditions, humanitarian, cannot be improved without rooting out the terrorist group first?
Well, if you want to go into these details, I have to say a couple of words which I normally would prefer not to pronounce. Originally, our American colleagues, I think on Wednesday, said, why cannot we consider a 3-day period? At least 3-day period. We checked with the military who know the situation on the ground, and we accepted it next morning. They said, thank you very much, but we now need 7. I don't think this is the appropriate way to conduct negotiations. In principle, I am convinced that these kind of things, for how long you can announce a pilot truce period, what would be the guarantee that it would not be violated? All this things must be discussed by professional military people. And we did create a Geneva cell with the United States. And the people there, at least the Russian military representatives, they're ready to sit down and to develop a common map of dislocation of Nusra, so that there is no ambiguity, so that there is no outcry every time Nusra is hit, and people start complaining that you hit, somebody else. This is the key of the problem. Otherwise, as I said, as soon as we separate, we can have truce forever. For those who are not Nusra.
Сбрасывание бочковых бомб. Вот. При этом глава комитета начальников штабов сказал, что тогда для этого придется США ввязаться в войну с Сирией и с Россией.
I apologize. Somebody is sending messages, right? Somebody is talking over the phone. Ma'am, can you stop doing this, please? Oh, translation. I apologize. И перед вами тоже извиняюсь.
Да. Значит, обсуждалась возможность американского контроля над воздушным... Обсуждалась возможность американского контроля над воздушным пространством Сирии, чтобы не допустить возможность сбрасывать бочковые бомбы. Глава комитета...
Что касается заявлений, вернее, инициатив, которые рассматриваются на Капитолии в Вашингтоне, честно говоря, я к ним отношусь так сдержанно, не очень за ними слежу, потому что там, особенно в условиях внутриполитической конъюнктуры, предпринимается немало шагов, которые призваны немедленно получить какой-то пропагандистский эффект, а на деле не имеют перспективы реализации. В любом случае, я доволен, что, как вы сказали, председатель Объединенного комитета начальников штабов не хочет воевать с Россией и с Сирией. И я думаю, это ответственная позиция военного человека. Что касается отмежевания, то, вы знаете, я сегодня только что выступал на Генеральной Ассамблее ООН, я сказал, что все больше и больше у нас создается впечатление, что кто-то либо не может, либо не хочет. Если говорить о неспособности, то решающую роль, конечно, во влиянии на группы, которые в Сирии воюют, имеют члены коалиции, возглавляемой Соединенными Штатами Америки. Все примерно представляют, у кого из членов этой коалиции есть влияние на те или иные отряды. Поэтому здесь, собственно говоря, картина ясная. И речь идет только о том, чтобы отдать им команду и перестать их поддерживать, пока они не отползут от позиций, которые занимают террористы. Значит, это не делается. Если это не делается по той причине, которую нам выдвигают, а именно, вот надо, чтобы правительство перестало летать, и тогда эти отряды убедятся, что можно отойти от Нусры, что их никто не будет бомбить, то это, честно говоря, малоубедительно, потому что это какая-то искусственная увязка. Поэтому не можем отделаться от мысли все-таки, что это не неспособность, а нежелание. Но уж как минимум нежелание вот всей коалиции в целом. Она же работает на основе консенсуса, как я понимаю, в таких вещах. И там нельзя просто приказать. Ну, вот такие сейчас реалии современного мира. Мир уже перестал быть однополярным, когда из одной столицы дают всем приказы, и все их выполняют. Значит, уже не получается. Но мы работаем, повторю, со всеми оппозиционерами, я имею в виду политические группы, и со всеми членами американской коалиции, особенно с региональными странами. Мы ведем речь о необходимости все-таки отделить патриотическую, там, здоровую оппозицию от террористов, потому что в конечном итоге история уже не раз показывала, что заигрывание с террористами, попытки их использовать ситуативно в какой-то обстановке для достижения сиюминутных геополитических целей оборачиваются тем, что потом эти же террористы, которых вы использовали, потом будут использовать вас и обратят свои грязные помыслы в вашу сторону. Так было и с маджахедами в Афганистане, которые потом переросли в Аль-Каиду. Так было и с историей создания исламского государства, так называемого, после событий в Ираке. Так что грабли, они одни и те же. Повторяю, мы ощущаем в двусторонних контактах со странами региона понимание этой задачи, но, видимо, нужно все-таки еще больше укреплять доверие между всеми внешними игроками. И тогда постараемся достичь результата. Но если это не неспособность, а отсутствие желания, я надеюсь, что это не так, не хочу в это верить, то тогда вывод только один, что все отрицания наличия плана «Б», они не вполне искренни.
James Bays from Al Jazeera. You've been telling us how you've come here searching for peace and trying to revive the ceasefire. Yet since you've been in New York for the last 48 hours, there's been a major escalation of the bombardment of Aleppo. How do you explain that? Are Russian aircraft involved? And if it's just the Syrian Air Force, do you condemn it?
Знаете, I condemn anyone who violates the international humanitarian law. I explained already to you, I hope you were listening to my answer to the first question, what this entire situation is about. You cannot speculate on the humanitarian aspects of the crisis, on the humanitarian sufferings of the civilians. And by insisting on humanitarian deliveries first, have a pretext not to move on political process, not to move on separation the opposition from the terrorists. It's a very dirty game if this is done intentionally. As far as the attacks are concerned, if you listen to the Security Council debate, what I said was we insist on the investigation of what happened to the humanitarian convoy in the eastern Aleppo. John Kerry said, unfortunately, that we know who did it. Fine, we have been through this 2 years ago when Malaysian airline plane was shot down over Ukraine. We insisted that the Security Council launched an investigation. The Americans said, yeah, okay, investigation may go, but we know who did it. That's the difference. Either you have the right for the final wisdom and use this as you please, or you are a member of international community and you want some collective action and some truth to be established. By the way, I spoke of Deir ez-Zor, and the Americans told us, yeah, that was a mistake, but we apologize, so forget about it. I brought a quote from Voice of America, September 20, Central Command spokesman Colonel John Thomas. Direct quote, for roughly 2 full days, that's about Deir ez-Zor, we were observing this target and believed that we had pretty good intelligence on what we were looking at. It was a dynamic target, so it was not a planned, deliberate strike, he explained. But we did take a couple of days to develop the target, and the decision was made by the decision authority that it was a good target after looking at all the intelligence and considering it. So the decision was not made on the spur of the moment. How about that? In Deir ez-Zor, the situation has been static for more than 2 years. The government troops surrounded by ISIL, and that's it. And, if this is a mistake after 2 full days of intelligence and of targeting, then we also want investigation, frankly speaking. And by the way, regarding the humanitarian convoy, it's not very difficult to find what was used to hit it. Artillery shell, a rocket, aerial bomb. There must be leftovers of this debris of the ordnance. So we asked the Americans, who might have access there, to start the honest investigation. I hope they would do this. John Kerry said that they also want to know the truth.
Lady in black.
Thank you.
He said lady in black?
Minister Lavrov. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Your colleague John Kerry has spoken today about a little progress today on possibly saving the deal. Can you tell us what that progress might be? Is Russia now considering a possible 7-day truce? And if this happens to all fall apart, what is your plan B?
We don't have any plan B because we are convinced that there is no military solution to this crisis. This is also conviction John Kerry is also convinced that there could be no military solution. He said so yesterday. Unfortunately, when we created a Syria support group, the first declaration of that group was not able to reflect this simple phrase: there is no military solution to the Syrian conflict. Some members of the group prevented all of us to say this in one voice. As regards the situation between us and the Americans as co-chairs of the ISSG, I said already a couple of times today that any special measures which go beyond the document of 9th of September are senseless if we don't start separation. Our military sit in Geneva. The Americans also have their team there, but they're not very open, if you wish, to daily serious work. We are convinced that it is not going to take long if intelligence is put on the table and the map is agreed with locations of Nusra. And then there would be no misunderstanding, no nothing. I mean, nothing which would be preventing us from moving on humanitarian, on ceasefire, cessation of hostilities. And of course, there must be immediate relaunch of political process, which the Security Council demanded to start without any preconditions. But for this, you have to deliver on what you committed yourself to in December. Separate the opposition from Nusra. We were told 1 month, then we were told 2 weeks, then we were told a couple of months, then we were told very difficult, and then we were told, but we still will be trying to do this. But to separate, as I said, you need to sit down, to have a map, and to agree on locations where Nusra. Compare intelligence. Of the Russian military, we have intelligence, of course, and the Americans have the same, and their coalition partners. But the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, who was already quoted today, I think yesterday said that that sharing intelligence with Russia is a bad idea. And that's on the day when the Russian-American documents were made public, and they clearly, explicitly require exchange of intelligence. So who takes the decisions? It's very difficult to understand. It does not help in this situation. And it increases suspicion that something is fishy. And we never mentioned Plan B. Plan B was mentioned by our partners, mentioned and then denied. But I hope, I trust John Kerry when he says that he is convinced there is no military solution. This is absolutely our position as well.
And is Russia now considering a 7-day truce?
I said that any truce, 7 days, 3 days, would be senseless, because I gave you examples of what was going on after 12th of September when the document was enforced. 350 attacks by the opposition close to Nusra against government troops and against living quarters. People get killed from the Syrian army, from the civilian population, and absolute inability of the American-led coalition to deliver on the pulling back from Costello Road, which the government started doing, actually, and they just refused. So we want to see any sign which would prove that the coalition has influence on those who are on the ground facing the government. I don't think it's asking too much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Minister, could you, on the question of chemical weapons, the UN's Joint Investigative Mechanism recently confirmed that Syria and the Islamic State have used chemical weapons in the case of Syria more than once. I wanted to know if Russia favors some sort of any kind of penalties, any sort of disciplinary action, sanctions, a resolution in the Council, any way to sort of push for accountability on this issue, and whether you've had discussions with Secretary Kerry or with the Americans in general on this issue.
No, we didn't discuss it. I mean, our delegations discussed it in the Security Council. It's a good report, good quality. Unfortunately, you quoted it a bit differently. It does not say that they confirm that the government and ISIL use the chemical weapons. They present evidence which is not conclusive, and they recognize this. It was very professionally formulated, and we want truth to be established. There is the mechanism which I think was extended a little time-wise exactly for this purpose, and we will be ready to cooperate with it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lavrov. The regional powers in the Nizar Aboud of Al Mayadeen television, the regional powers, especially Turkey and Israel, both were involved almost simultaneously against the Syrian army in some instances and against other opposition groups. How is your contacts with these regional groups, especially when it comes to the area close or proximity to Aleppo and those which are close to the Golan? How is your contacts with them, and how can they play a different role in this conflict?
Anyone who is present on the ground in Syria without invitation, without consent of the government, is there in violation of international law. Anyone who flies Syrian airspace without consent, without acquiescence, at least of the Syrian government, is violating international law as well. Yes, we are, as I said, in touch with all regional countries. We understand their concerns, the real challenges to their security, be it Turkey, be it Israel, be it other countries, and we have a dialogue with them, trying to make sure that whatever they are concerned of to be resolved in the framework of international law. It is not difficult, it is not impossible. The basic problem in this regard is unwillingness of some of regional players to recognize that whatever you say, whatever you send to your friends in the armed opposition, the single biggest, most efficient force fighting ISIL and Nusra in Syria is the Syrian army. And just to stick to the notion that 5 years ago Assad became illegitimate and therefore we are not going, to fight terror collectively until he is there, I think it's absolutely irresponsible. But little by little, life, I think, will make everyone understand that it's only together that you fight terrorism, and you must have your priorities right. The Americans, the responsible American officials, recognized, at least in our discussions, that ISIL is much bigger threat than Assad. So have your priorities right.
Thank you. Good to see you again. USG O'Brien has given constant press conferences and speeches on Syria denying a lot of convoys to different parts of the country, which could be a war crime if you're trying to starve people, just like throwing barrel bombs at civilians is one. Have you any influence in trying to get the humanitarian convoys moving? And I'm not speaking about the mess in Aleppo.
No, no, no. Why not? You know, it is not exactly accurate what if what O'Brien has said as presented by you. There is statistics which somehow UN and Geneva is not circulating. Statistics about quite a number of towns and cities where humanitarian assistance has been moving during this week, after the document was endorsed. But UN somehow circulates only information on denial, not information on receiving and allowing. Next time you talk to him, or he talks to you, ask him for the full information. I believe this would be a better picture. By the way, still on Aleppo, 26th of August was another meeting between me and John Kerry in Geneva, and Staffan de Mistura was there. And Staffan said, it's a very lucky coincidence and very symbolic. We are meeting in Geneva, and today the first humanitarian convoy will move from Turkey to eastern Aleppo. And we were even preparing some statement to the press and some celebration. And then the UN people received a message from the so-called local council in eastern Aleppo, who said, if you use Castello Road, we would hit this convoy. We would fire at it. And I asked John whether they would just swallow this threat or they have some influence to use their friends in the coalition and the region to discipline these people, to let the humanitarian goodies into eastern Aleppo. They could not react. De Mistura said, why? Well, let's wait for a couple of days. Maybe on the 28th of August they would change their mind. Then he hoped that they would do this on early September, and so on and so forth. I believe this is unacceptable. And speaking of this, I read, I think, in Wall Street Journal on the next day after Aleppo incident, that the day before the convoy, this unlucky convoy, moved, the same local council from the same part of Aleppo said, please don't send the convoy because the government plans to hit it. And apparently the UN people from O'Brien department said the risk of shelling is not the reason not to send the convoy. I'm not, support of conspiracy theories, but if the same group 1 month ago says we will fire at this convoy, and then 1 month later then they say the government will do this, even more reason to have very thorough and very objective investigation.
Let's jump to the background.
Thank you. Mr. Foreign Minister, to take you to a somewhat different part of the Middle East, I had an exchange just a couple of hours ago with your French colleague, Monsieur Ayroul, about the peace conference that they would like to hold, they say, in December. What I'd like to know is, sir, is your government in any way involved? Do you support the holding of this peace conference? Are you going to be participating in some way? And what realistically in December do you hope to accomplish?
We were not consulted on this initiative. We were just told that there would be a meeting to discuss it in Paris on the 3rd of June. I could not make it. I had something which prevented me from going. My deputy went. He participated there. He listened to what was said by the French hosts, who explained their vision of this conference. But that preparatory meeting on the 3rd of June was attended by quite a number of countries whom the French invited. But no, we were not consulted. Now we understand better about the concept. They want to address social situation in Palestine, economic situation, and so on and so forth, infrastructure, and of course also other measures of confidence building. We support anything which makes brings us closer to the resumption of Israeli-Palestinian talks. For this to happen, any initiative must be acceptable to both. And when it is acceptable to both parties, then the parties must agree what will be the added value. Some 10 years ago, by the way, we wanted to convene a conference. We did not announce it just out of the blue. We went to the Security Council. The Security Council endorsed a Moscow conference initiative, but we made it very clear that we would only move when we are convinced that the parties are ready to do something positive together. If this is going to be the case with the French initiative, I would be only glad. But so far, it doesn't seem that the parties are equally eager to consider it. But we are working with both Israel and Palestine. We have to resume negotiations anyway. And there are some ideas that, there might be some meeting between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas, and that we might be helpful. If this is the case, if they both want it, we certainly would not be found wanting.
We have time for 2 more questions, please, Associated Press.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foreign Minister, and welcome back to a place that's very familiar to you. We're always glad to see you here. I'd like to follow up on the what's next in Syria. From just listening to you, it appeared that you're saying that a 3-day truce or a 7-day ceasefire aren't going to work unless there is real serious action on separating the opposition from the Nusra front. Does that mean that we're going to have to wait, the world's going to have to wait for that to happen before there's any serious chance of a new cessation of hostilities? Our UN Secretary of State John Kerry planning to hold more talks either today or in the near future?
No, that means that I need to repeat what I said, but I hope you can listen to your recorded after the press conference. But, it's one example, Yemen. There was a coup, rebellion, the president ran away a couple of years ago, was it? But unlike Ukraine, where next morning after the president left Kyiv, people said, okay, fine, we recognize this government. In Yemen, for the second consecutive year, we say, no, he must be brought back, he must be brought back. That's just in brackets about double standards to the situations which are very similar, especially taking into account that in case of Ukraine, the coup took place next morning after the coup leaders signed a deal with President of Ukraine, witnessed by Germany, France, and Poland. And all of them just, washed their hands and said, well, he left Kyiv. By the way, he didn't run abroad. He went to another city. But Yemen, for the second consecutive year, we are trying to find some mysterious solution which would resolve this disaster. Humanitarian disaster, by the way. Talk to O'Brien, he knows, he told me how bad things are in Yemen. And we all want the participants of this conflict, both Yemeni parties and the coalition, with the help of the international community, to find a way out. The latest plan, designed after so many failed plans, was produced, I think, by US, UK, Saudi Arabia, and supported by the UN envoy. The first step of this plan is creation of the government of national unity, just like it was in the case of Ukraine, which was violated by the opposition who signed it. But in Yemen, The first item is government of national unity, and then surrender of weapons, then pulling back from the territories. And I ask the Americans and all those who raise questions in the same vein as you just did, why in Yemen we all agreed that unless there is some political framework satisfying all participants of the crisis, of the conflict, and why in Syria we say no political process until total quiet for 1 month or 1 week or 3 days. I hope this is, you can take this as an answer.
Just the quick follow-up. Are you planning to meet Secretary Kerry again today?
We met already.
And the last question, please.
Majid Gilli, Rodao Media Network. Mr. Foreign Minister, details of the recent ceasefire agreement remain secret. And were the Kurdish YPG forces included in that ceasefire? And do you think that future ceasefire agreement should emphasize that attacking YPG forces by opposition or the government forces is a breach of that future ceasefire agreement?
Yeah, but I don't think the cessation of hostilities details are secret. As I said, they were made public, first by Associated Press, I think, and then the State Department published them without, by the way, telling us, in spite of the fact that from the very beginning we insisted on making them public, but we thought it would be normal and appropriate to do it together as two sponsors, co-chairs, and two authors of this document. But doesn't matter. The main thing is that they are available, and the entire mess of these decisions, ISSG, Security Council, Russian-American, cessation of hostility, it proceeds from the very clear principle that ISIL and Nusra are considered as terrorist organizations and listed as such by the Security Council. Anyone else is not considered as terrorist, is not considered as fair game, provided they join the cessation of hostilities and provided they don't attack anyone of the participants of the cessation of hostilities. And that's my answer.
Follow up on that, but the YPG declared that they accept the ceasefire, but given the sensitivity, as you are well aware of, between YPG and Turkish-backed opposition groups, do you think there should be an emphasis that attacking YPG forces is a violation of a ceasefire in future ceasefire?
It's already very much explicit from the documents which are made officially public. As I told you, it's only Nusra and ISIL which are not covered by cessation of hostilities. Those, except Nusra and ISIL, who want to be part of the cessation of hostilities are covered by this, they have protection of the cessation of hostilities and of the Security Council.
What about next Secretary General? Do you have any thoughts on next Secretary General?
A lot.
Right, well.